Hi, everyone. We are back for another edition of the Parent Pivot Podcast. I am Pop.
And I am Juju.
If you're listening to the podcast, you're like going, "Wait, what? What just happened? What do you mean you're Pop and Juju?" Otherwise known as I'm Steve Cummings.
And Julia Cummings.
We're just wearing. Julia's got a sweatshirt on because she goes by Juju to our
grandchildren call me Juju.
Yes, and I go by Pop. And I was just trying to get Florence to say Pop, and she just got done with her bath, and I heard her going Pop, 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 Pop. So we're almost there. Anyway, so welcome to the Parent Pivot Podcast. And what I like to do, in fact, I know right now where we're going, but I'm going to let you introduce what we're going to talk about. So go ahead.
So, we put out there all the time to DM us and give us ideas and stuff. And somebody DM'd us the other day, and an adult child.
Yep.
Which we really appreciate because we've been reaching out more and trying to get more feedback from that side of the aisle.
Yep.
To figure out.
There's an aisle. Yeah. I'm thinking, okay, parents, partners on this side and adult children on the other.
Yeah. But to show, to see what they're saying that they need help with.
Right.
So this person DM'd us, and they are asking the question of, what do you do if your parents aren't really fond of your partner, fiance, boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, whatever? We're going to take this from two different angles. We're first going to talk about it from the parent of the adult child.
Partner side.
The partner side.
Yep.
And then we're going to talk about it from the adult child side.
Right. So yeah, we want to go down because we basically have split audiences here, and now we've got kind of both that are listening and things. So we obviously want to talk to partners saying, hey, if this is you and you've got some negative feelings, or you're not like 100% in on who your adult child has chosen for those roles that you talked about. And then when we're done talking about that, we're going to switch and go the other direction and say, okay, I'm the adult child. It's my partner, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Yeah. And what can you tell me about how to talk with my parents?
Yeah.
Who we're trying to get them to pivot to partners.
Yeah. So the first question I want to ask that is more of a thought-provoking question.
Two partners
is, when you were dating or newly married or whatever, your spouse, what would you have done if your parents were rude to your partner, or if they were not kind, or they did not think highly of, or whatever? I'm very curious what you would have done, particularly if you're already married. And where I want to go with that is, if they're already married, it's done.
It's a done deal.
It's
the
a
egg
done
has been
deal.
Cracked in the pan.
They are married. They have made a covenant. They are committed. They are making a life. They are going to have children, which will be your grandchildren, and all of those things. So your role, if they are married, is to make the best of the situation. If you are doing things like being rude back,
or passive aggressive,
being passive aggressive, or not talking to them, not acknowledging them, anything like that.
Or I can even think of, you're giving your adult child something nice on their birthday or Christmas, but you're not giving your
in-law
child. You're giving them lesser thing, and that's obvious, because it's basically you're communicating the same thing, even though you can sit there and defend yourself. In your heart. I mean, we're asking you to be authentic and honest here, and I think a lot of it has to do with expectations. This is who I thought my child was going to marry, and it's not fitting my expectations, and therefore I'm disappointed. And really, you're delaying the grieving process over that, and you need to move on with it.
Right. And I want to get into those different scenarios. Yes, you kind of jumped the gun there a little bit, but it's fine.
Okay.
But really, I just want to bring it back to the partner, saying you are responsible for how you are behaving. So if you're behaving in a not nice way, you're making the situation worse.
Yep.
That person's not suddenly going to be different because you're being rude. It's not going to happen. So you need to make a different choice. You need to extend a hand of grace. You need to find a way to love them. Back in the 80s, this is for those of you who remember this. Back in the 80s, if you remember when the hostages got in 79, I believe, that they got kidnapped in
Iran.
And the Ayatollah Khomeini was, all over the news. And I remember having a conversation with a girlfriend of mine at Biola and saying to her, I just really feel like anybody who's alive, if you sat down and had a conversation with them, that you'd have a better understanding of who they were and what led them to being the way they are. So even in the case of the Ayatollah Khomeini, who was an awful person, we're seeing a lot of terrorism right now. So we can relate it to somebody that we might see in the news now, that even if we sat down with that person, we might not agree with them. We may still see them as the personification of evil in some way, but we are going to better understand who they are, where they came from, and why they are the way they are.
Right.
So that is my first piece that I think is really important. It's kind of that shut up part of, keep the welcome mat out and your mouth shut. You've got to just be quiet, and you've got to extend a hand of love and grace. This is your child's chosen significant other. And it's not about you.
And the old saying is opposites attract.
Yeah.
So it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't know it was going to be that opposite.
Right.
But your daughter or your son is going, this is the person I want to, either is dating, let's say, or is already married, or maybe they already have kids and it's still been carrying on, and it's quite obvious.
Yeah.
It's going to get to a point where you're going to cause so much harm to the relationship that your adult kids may just say, you know what, we're not going to deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
And things. And they're going to set down some hard boundaries. And now you're going to see your grandkids even less.
Yeah.
Is that really what you want to have for the rest of your grandparenting season?
Well, or even your children. You're not going to have a relationship with your adult child, and you're not going to have anything of what you might have dreamed of for the future.
Right.
Because we all, when we have kids, we do imagine a life where our kids get married and we're excited to walk them down the aisle, or, whatever, and their grandchildren coming, all of those things. So all of that to say, if they're already married, you need to fix yourself. You can't fix them. You can't change them. You can't make it different. Okay, let's move into if this is someone that they're not married to.
Like they're dating.
So I want to remind everyone, if you've been listening to us for a long time, you've heard the interviews with our children.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember our second oldest, Campbell,
mm-hmm.
he told a story in his interview about dating this girl where the first time he met the parents were saying, or it was the mom, was saying to him.
On the first time he met them.
Here,
ready for this? Are everybody listening?
He's 23 years old, working at a Christian camp, had just finished the summer at a Christian camp. That's where they met.
Yep.
And he meets them for the first time, and they ask him, do you have a 401k?
At 22 years old.
Ludicrous. So the reason why I say that that's ludicrous, and this is where, again, partners, if you're not approving of who they're dating, you've got to look at yourself first. What is bugging you about this?
Right.
So you've got to be honest with yourself. Did I think my child was going to marry a lawyer, a doctor, whatever? Or did I dream of them marrying someone who was a really good person, a sensitive soul, someone who would be a good parent someday? All of those things. I'm wondering what it is inside of you that was your expectation of your child and who they would be with that is keeping you from accepting them and then becoming ugly in the process.
Right. You have in what I'm hearing is could be a type A parent.
Mm-hmm.
And us type A people, we've got dreams, aspirations. Here's how it's going to happen. I've got it all. I love you and I have a wonderful plan for your life. All you have to do is fill it in with what I've already decided about you, and we will all live happily ever after.
Right. And with that, I realize it's easy to look at someone that your child's dating and think, oh, they're not good enough for them.
Right.
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 And you want to put a stop to it because what's going to happen? And so then you've got to look at, what are my fears inside
Right.
of me? What is it?
What's really at stake here? What's the deeper part of that iceberg for you that's going on beneath the surface, where the behavior that's coming out is your adult child is reading the fact that, hey, they don't like the person that I'm married to, dating, whatever that is. What is that? What's driving that?
So now where I'm going to veer a little bit away from these kind of centered ideas is, what if you see that your child is being abused in some way? And I don't even necessarily mean physical, because it can be emotional,
controlled,
controlled, or you can see that there's a lack of respect there, or you can see that perhaps they just don't treat them well in front of other people. There's a plethora of things that you may be witness to.
So some legitimate concerns.
Sure. And you don't want your child in that situation. So where I would go with that, if this is a real problem, is if this is your daughter, I would say, dad, step in, and you've got to have a face-to-face conversation with that person. And you've got to say, hey.
Right, so I'm sorry, because I'm tracking what you're saying. Dad steps in to talk to in-law child or the person my daughter's dating.
Yes.
So we're going man to man, woman to woman. Got it. Yeah. Okay. I had to get that straight, so I understood.
Yeah, and just to sit down and have a very civil, nice conversation, perhaps with the thought of just, again, finding out who they are, where they came from, what was their home life like, to see what that was like, and to say to them, as dad, I want the very best for my daughter. Mom, you can say this to a woman. I want the very best. I don't want to get in the middle of your relationship, and I want to have a relationship with you as well. But I can't stand by and watch you treat them poorly. That isn't something that I can do, especially if they're married. So this is something too to think about. And this is more maybe a Christian perspective. When I go to a wedding and they are getting married and all this stuff, you as a participant in that wedding, I feel like you hold some responsibility to what you see in the future in that marriage, and that it should be something that you feel pulled toward in helping people if it's not going well. So a lot of us would probably have the tendency to go, not my pig, not my farm. That's not my problem. That's their marriage, which is also very true. But there might be a scenario, if you are close enough with one of these people, where you are calling them out. So,
or always asking permission. Hey, can I speak freely and honestly?
Yeah.
First, I mean, always ask for their permission, especially if you're really tight. Like bridesmaids are tight. Men have their best friends from groomsmen, men have their from college days or the military or wherever. But always ask permission.
But this does get more complicated when parents are involved, for sure. But if I'm seeing my adult child diminishing, being treated poorly, I might need to speak up to that same sex person. So I think man to man, that's a great scenario where you can, as a man, just go, this is my baby girl. Like, this isn't okay with me. And you might want to even suggest, hey, let's spend some weekly time together, getting to know each other. I'd like to talk to you. I'd love to mentor you in any way I can. Let them kind of direct it a little. But I think that in a scenario where someone is being treated poorly or abused in some way, that somebody needs to speak up.
Okay,
does that make sense?
Yep, sure. That's more the extreme position. If something's really off with that person and it's legitimate, but if it's just
somebody dating,
And you see a difference in personalities. Maybe your daughter or son is completely outgoing, and the person there, whatever, is not.
Yeah.
That's actually okay.
So in the scenario that I was giving earlier, where our son dated this girl, um, the girl was becoming a nurse. I think her parents really desired a doctor. Um, Campbell did not really know what he was doing in life, but they would tell him all the time, everything about you is exactly what I would want for my daughter.
Right.
But that money piece really bothered them.
Right.
And so I want to challenge you, partners, that if that's what's driving you, you've got to search your heart and figure out, because money doesn't make
Money's
a happy marriage.
Money is an idol.
And it's not it doesn't make for a happy marriage. It may help with lack of stress when money is involved or whatever, but honestly, you tell me, you've known plenty of couples who had a lot of money who were not happy people.
And I also want to add too, I mean, it's hard to be a partner and watch your kids suffer. Suffering could be financially.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not making it. And so I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do something. It's like, no, you don't. They'll figure it out. God is with them. Be there to love them well. Love your in-law kids well. We've done interviews with our three of our in-law kids. Two of our in-law kids.
Two of our
We got two more to go.
Yeah.
They're hard to get to because they're in the country. We'll have to bring our microphone.
One of them, I'm not so sure she would do it anyway.
But. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So on from there. So if they're dating, you've got to search your own heart and figure out what it is that makes that person not good enough for your child. Because that's really probably more about you and expectations. And yeah. The next step I would say is
wait, time out before we go to the next step.
Yeah.
Some of that could even be faith related.
Oh, absolutely. If they're of a different faith, or if you're a Christian and they're not a Christian.
And you want to go to the Bible and say, look, it says right here, don't be unequally yoked and da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
It's like, you know what? Maybe God's got something in store for that marriage. Mm-hmm. You can speak the truth in love, but the question is, we're raising responsible adults who can make their own decisions. We're launching them. We're keeping our mouth shut and welcome that out. And they will need to experience whatever ramifications or things happen from that marriage. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue to love them. I don't have control over anything about what they decide to do, where they're going to live, what jobs they're going to have, what nationality they're from, how much money they make, what profession, none of that stuff. That stuff all has to be given to the Lord and surrendered, and saying, my dream, my expectation is not going to happen. There will be some grieving over that, but how can I embrace this person that my adult child has chosen?
And the best way to embrace them is get to know them on a more personal level.
Things are going to go a whole lot better, and you're going to feel better. And you may be the vehicle that God uses down the road to potentially bring that person to faith through loving them, not looking at the behavior above the surface of the water, but asking good questions, loving this person through everything. They go, you know what? I really love your parents. Mm-hmm. They're always present. They are always asking questions about me. They know I smoke, or they know I drink, or they know this or that, but yet they still love me. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about this Jesus that you have fallen in love with. I mean, God's done that a million times over. Mm-hmm. And so you never know. You might be the conduit to a happy ending, but because you're holding on to it didn't work out my way, you may not see your grandchildren as much as you'd like to, because your adult child's going to go, you know what? I made a covenant to leave and cleave from you, Mom and Dad. Mm-hmm. And this is my family now. They are now number one.
Right.
And that's actually what we want. That's healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. So that scenario, I'm trying to think of what the other scenarios that I was thinking of before this, because now I've lost my train of thought. But anyway, that's not your fault. Okay. That's just me being me. So all of that being said, let's switch over to the adult child.
Okay.
Oh, I want to just close up that one piece with saying, You need to know and understand why you don't like that person. That is up to you. You've got to know why so that you can make changes based on the whys. Um, and so that you can have a conversation if you need to or whatever. So switching to the adult child, let's say you are with someone who your parents don't like.
And you're already married.
You're already married. They're rude. They are passive aggressive. They ignore this person. They favor other people. Maybe you even have a child and they're favoring your other siblings' children more than yours because they don't like this person.
Right. And it's very obvious because you're getting defensive and telling them that they're wrong. I mean, we all know how to pick up on cues.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all know what that's like. So, stop playing that game.
Yeah.
Just stop playing that game and be honest.
So, adult child, this is where you can help yourself. Number one, be mature in your responses. It's never going to go well if they're behaving poorly and you behave poorly also. Same thing I told them. If somebody's behaving poorly and you respond poorly, nothing's going to get better. It's only going to keep spinning out of control and get worse and worse and worse through the years. So, adult child, if you want to have a good, healthy relationship with your parents, if you want your spouse, boyfriend, significant other, partner, whatever, to have a good relationship with your parents, then it might take you going to them and saying, hey, can we have a conversation?
Now, would you do that again, female to female and male to male?
No, I think a child can go to her parent or hers or his parents.
Going to both of them?
Yes, and have a conversation with them.
All right.
And say, can we sit down and have a conversation? And you can say, so I'm noticing, you're not accusing, you're not.
Yeah, put it on you. My experience has been.
This is me noticing that you seem to treat Bob, whatever his name is, differently.
What about Bob?
Differently than you treat me. And I see that you treat my siblings, significant others, differently. Can you explain to me why it appears that you don't like this person? And you're kind of forcing their hand to actually think about it. And they may point to several things. Well, they came into my home and they did this and this and this. They were disrespectful. They didn't say thank you. They expect me to pay for something, blah, blah, blah. There could be a plethora of things. It could be they're not a Christian. They don't follow our faith. They don't, whatever. And all of those things bother me. I don't think they treat you well. So you can ask them specifics. Can you tell me about that? Can you tell me about what you see that you think that they don't treat me well? Can you tell me about a time when they were disrespectful to you? Let's talk that through. And if you see yourself with this person long term, if they're not a spouse yet and you see them going long term, make sure you know why you see that. Make sure that you know that this is the best person for you, because your parents could very well be right.
Right.
So
maybe you could be in love with the idea of getting married. Maybe this person's really great looking, but the character's not there and mom and dad see the character. I don't know. I'm just throwing out things to be thinking about.
Yeah, because mom and dad, they have known you for your whole life. And they may see things that you don't. You may have blind spots to this person. And you've got to be honest with yourself. Do I like this person specifically because my parents don't? That is a really good possibility of that. So that's kind of our nature sometimes. But you need to know why you think this person is good for you. You need to know why this person, you can see a future with them. You need to be able to see their character and to be able to shine light on that character. So the same things I'm telling your parents over here are the same things that I'm saying to you. So whichever side you're coming from, you've got to be mature. You've got to be calm in your communication. You've got to know why you think the way you think. And I'm not talking about setting up a court case. When you go into these conversations, it needs to be with the idea of listening. So, partners and adult children, that's what you're after. I'm going to go into this asking questions and listening and trying to figure out and hear what they see, where they're coming from, what their history is, who they are, all of those things.
And I would add too, adult kids on that. One more piece you have is, yes, like we talked about in our last podcast, there's information that I'm missing here.
Yeah.
I want to get more information beneath the surface, mom, dad, what's going on toward my spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is. And then take all that. Don't sit there and go and argue about it. Again, it's their perspective. This is what they're seeing. And then if I've got some trusted friends in my life who are going to have either been in my wedding or going to be in my wedding, or, your good guy friends, your good girlfriends, I would say, hey, can we go out and have a beer or get our nails done, whatever women do, and take that information that you heard from mom and dad who've known you for so long and saying, do you see this same stuff going on? Because I really want to make the right decision here. Do you see that same stuff going on? And this is how God leads. He's going to lead through the counsel of others. Yeah. So if you're coming from the Christian faith, take that information. And if you get confirmation, it's like, okay, I can see that. Now you got to ask yourself, what is it in me that I love about this person? Because really, when we say I do at the altar, we have no idea what we're getting into.
We really don't.
I mean, we've spent the next 36 years kind of getting to know each other deeper and in life situations. And sometimes things are really great and sometimes they're not. And, I know her heart well enough that I know how she'll respond in certain situations, and the same back. And so, but at the altar, you're still learning. You still have no clue, but you want to make a good decision based on those people around you that love you the most. Mom and dad should be, or normally are 1 and 2, maybe grandma and grandpa, they do it, but take it to other trusted siblings, relatives, best friends, and saying, hey, I'm really, does anybody else see this?
Yeah.
And be prepared to accept, what's coming back, and just asking for their perspective. And if they say, nope, I think he's a fine man and she's a fine young lady and whatever, then it might just become more isolated. And it's the partner, the parent, who needs to look at themselves, as we talked about earlier in the podcast. It's like, hey, take that and going, what truthfully is really driving you? Just say it, and it may be hurtful. So there might be some time that needs to happen just within the healing of that relationship, because honesty, it brings out the honest part, but sometimes it's like hard to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes we need space to process and forgive.
And I would also encourage you, if it's appropriate, I've seen some parents and their children, to kind of talk through some stuff and to work those things out. So it would be perfectly fine to actually maybe go seek a third person in the situation, a professional who you can talk through with that, and see what their perspective is on it.
Yeah.
They're probably going to be very similar to what I'm saying, I'm assuming. But I don't know. There are so many nuanced things here. So there is no cut and dry, black and white, because unless you know the reasons why this is happening, it's somebody's in the dark, right?
Right. And let me give a scenario here, because let's say I'm already married.
Yeah.
My parents don't like my spouse.
Mm-hmm.
It's very clear, and things, and they're not going to change.
Yeah.
And I've taken your advice, Steve and Julia, Pop and Juju. I've taken your advice or counsel. I've sat down and had the conversation. They don't listen to your podcast, and things. They won't listen to the first part of this. I don't know, whatever. And basically nothing's changing.
Right. They're being stubborn or whatever. Yeah.
Now what do I do?
Yeah, that's where things get very difficult, because if it's something that is affecting your relationship with your spouse, this comes first.
Right.
Now, if it's a dating relationship, I would say that's not true, because your dating relationship doesn't come before
Yeah,
your
but if
family.
you're already married
But
and
if
you've
you're
got
already
kids
married,
and this has been going on for a while and
yeah,
you're not seeing any hope.
you might need to make some really strict boundaries. So, and by boundaries, I mean, let's say it's a situation where mom doesn't approve of son-in-law, and every time you guys are in the same room, she says something sarcastic or snarky or passive aggressive and whatever else. If that is something that even after you talk to them, it just
Nothing's
remains
changed.
there, and then what you do is you build a boundary and you say, mom, this is how this is going to work. Every time that you respond to Bob over here that way, I am going to take a step back, and I probably will not talk to you for a bit, because I'm going to need to work through that, heal from it, whatever. If there is a cause and effect in things, that's the only way to really get someone to truly change sometimes. So I think about your friend who did that with his mom. His mom was very awful to him and would say awful things, and he, in his 50s, was telling her, mom, from now on, this is what's going to happen when you do this. When you do this, I'm going to do this, and this is the way it's going to be.
Right.
So he had to follow through every time that was happening.
Right.
And it became less and less.
Right. So adult kids, what I want to say to you out there is, yes, your parents are quote unquote always your parent, because that's the positional thing. They obviously gave birth to you, whatever. But as we're trying to help them pivot from that parenting thinking to the partner thinking, if they're not there yet, or they haven't listened to a podcast, or they're slow to get there and they're still trying to parent and whatever, you can be the more mature one. Okay. And you can set the boundaries. And maybe that means you're not going to, I mean, like I'm just thinking, hon, that maybe sometimes you have to say, "Hey, we're not going to come over for whatever."
Yeah, you may need
and make it more stringent, saying we're not coming over for family gatherings or Christmas, or we're going to do Christmas on our own, or we're going to our husband's side of the family and things. And that sounds harsh, but you can communicate. This is my number one relationship, and you need to get used to it. We want our kids to be with grandma and grandpa. We love that. But until this changes, this is painful to us, and you're doing damage to our family relationships. This is my number one relationship. I love this person. I'm committed to them. And you kind of need to get over it and get used to it. And if you can't, then we probably be spending less time with you.
Right. And that
sounds harsh, but that's an extreme. I'm talking about the extreme situation. Yes.
Because it would never be our goal to be out of relationship with anybody.
Because we're not encouraging fracturing relationships here. We're encouraging you to protect your family, your marriage, even from mom and dad who are refusing to be honest and do any changing on their own. I don't think there's going to be very few of those people out there. I'm hoping.
There are more.
But you never know.
More than you think.
You hope everybody's open to change and what God wants for them, and they can let go of their dreams and ambitions and expectations for their kids.
Yes. And so parents, partners, too many P's. Partners, if this is you that's having a really hard time accepting someone, there are a couple more things that I just want to drive home the point. If you're someone that needs control in your life, be honest with yourself about that, because that may be one of the biggest issues. The other piece is, and this is kind of ridiculous to say, honestly, but if you're a narcissist, if you've been told you're a narcissist and you are behaving in a narcissistic way, you just need to go get some help with that. Now, the reason why I say there's no point in me saying that is narcissists never see themselves as narcissists, and a true narcissist doesn't. But they may just have narcissistic behavior, and so that is a problem. So if you're on the adult child side and you have a parent who is being controlling or is narcissistic, that's a whole nother ball of wax that you may need to get help with. So because that, again, so many of these things are so nuanced. And so I don't want to say that there's some black and white answer for everything. There's not a formula. There are all of these different things that could be going on, but the most important thing is that you are having conversations, that you are not being accusatory or inflammatory, that you are trying to listen and gain insight into the way the other person thinks. So those are the things that you can count on that can be done by you, whether you're, no matter which side you're on.
And I want to add this to adult kids, and that is, remember, most of the times when it comes to relationship stuff, and because I'm a recovering type A controlling person, I'm not that way anymore, right? Gotten better. I'm recovering, transformed. Anyway, that's driven by fear. I am fearful that I see all these things and I need to solve that problem for you. And this isn't going to solve that problem. It's going to create this problem and I don't know how to solve that problem. And so therefore I feel inadequate. Like I said, I love you and I have a wonderful plan for your life. I don't know how to let that go. So if you can be compassionate and understanding, it's the death of a dream, maybe for mom or dad. And they don't know that the controlling piece of them is actually fear-based and fear-driven, and they have worries and fears and, getting pregnant and having a family and this, that, and the other. No, this is going to, I mean, they're connecting so many dots that will never happen. But that could be.
And even if they do happen.
Right. And if they do happen, it's not their business to be in the middle of that.
No.
It's almost like some of the movies that you watch where you've got, Marie Barone involved in the middle of everything. And we know how much Deborah didn't like Marie being intrusive and in that.
He's talking about Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah.
So you know.
We watched that at night.
Yeah. Anyway.
Have we covered everything?
Yeah. I just feel like there's so much out there and I feel like we've been bouncing around.
Yeah.
But I do just want to, what I last said is the most important thing that can be done and needs to be done. The other piece, that you were bringing up just about that parent who's kind of maybe spiraling a little bit, partner, excuse me, that one of the things that you can actually do for them is to validate them. And by validating, that doesn't mean you're agreeing with what they're doing.
No.
It just means, Mom, Dad, I know this is hard for you. I know that this was the dream you had for me. And I know that you're concerned about A, B, and C. But that is not going to affect what I do at this point. I'm an adult person and I am going to make mistakes. And I need you to allow me to make mistakes. If I'm married already, I'm married to this person. I'm committed. I'm not going to divorce them. So you might as well start being nice to them. But validating where you know that they might be coming from, that automatically puts them not on the defense where they can actually maybe
right,
hear
because you're coming with a heart of compassion and understanding and kind of taking their lens and going, hey, I see how you see this.
Yes.
You're not agreeing with them and telling them that, but like Julia just said, you're basically saying, oh, okay, I get it. You're keeping the conversation from escalating and becoming a you said, and you don't get anywhere that way. The calmer you can be and let the other person, if they end up getting animated, the more calmer you are.
The more calmer.
Did I say that wrong?
Yeah.
I'm always saying the wrong word, and Julia she is a grammar Nazi. I did get one right recently. What was that?
Yeah, I don't remember. But you just said more calmer.
Yeah, I think everybody knows what I meant.
More calm.
More calm.
Or just calmer.
Calmer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry, I am a word Nazi. No way. Excuse me for correcting you in front of people.
What else?
I love you.
I love you too.
Anyway. I'm sorry, we just made you sick. Anyway, I hope that we've covered this well. I hope that we've covered it from both ends. If adult children, if you have more things that you would love for us to talk about and cover,
send us a direct message.
Please send us a direct message. Parents of adult children, please do the same.
And partners.
Partners.
Do you know what a direct message is? Yes.
So all of that, Yeah.
We're on social media.
I feel like we've kind of beat a dead horse.
We are on social media. So on social media, if you're at Instagram or Facebook, just go to Parent Pivot Podcast and direct message us there. Yeah. And we're getting in touch more and more with everybody about things. So we will do a podcast on some questions that you have. So that's how you get a hold of us. We love coming to you. Please share this. If you're watching us on YouTube, could you hit subscribe right down there and leave a comment and share that on your social media page? And also on your social media page.
And Instagram.
And if you're watching us on or listening to us on the podcast, can you rate us and review us and share us with your friends? And
that would mean a lot to us.
Would mean a lot to us. What else?
Also, I just want to say one more thing.
One more thing.
Go to marriage conferences, you guys. Some of these situations can be resolved by working on them with your spouse. And so I would encourage that. Go to marriage conferences, have some deep conversations, talk with each other, and be on the same page with each other.
Yeah. And two, let me break the myth that marriage conferences are because your marriage is in trouble. That is a bunch of baloney. That's a lie from the pit of hell, and tell Satan what to do with that. Okay. Weekend to Remember is one that we've gone to quite a few times with Family Life. They have awesome marriage conferences. You get to get away for the weekend. It's a weekend getaway, but you can kind of Google Christian marriage conferences. Maybe your church does one too, but it's like, you take your car in to get a tune-up. Why wouldn't you take your marriage in to get a tune-up?
Yeah.
Because it's usually boils down to communication and empathy and understanding and how we communicate with each other. Otherwise, we end up doing our dance and we feel so frustrated. My wife doesn't understand me. My husband's not listening. He doesn't get me. And it's because we're not listening and understanding well and communicating well. So I need a tune-up every once in a while. I mean, on the last podcast, I tried to give an IFAB and I blew it. I've been working on that for 7 years. Anyway, hey, thanks for joining us on this edition of the Parent Pivot Podcast and YouTube cast. And we will look forward to seeing you guys next week on a Tuesday with more content.